Here's my take. The biggest lesson here is, despite all this talk of putting electability first, primaries are about ideology. And Perry has stopped climbing, even dipped a bit, because as conservatives get a closer look, they see him as out of sync with their views on immigration, perhaps, or the use of executive power. So let's go behind the numbers now with Eric Ericson, who I just mentioned, Republican strategist and Romney backer from the 2008 campaign. I'll try to speak English. Kevin Madden, and CNN contributor Roland Martin, who, suffice to say, is a bit to the left of these other gentlemen.
That's not hard.
I want to get first to the Eric Ericson, to the simple horse race numbers. I don't want to make too much of one poll, but Perry was doing this, and he has at least now done this. In your take and in your conversations with fellow conservatives, is that as people learn more about the record, they get a little pause?
It's not so much his record, except on immigration. The HPV thing, I think, has been overplayed. Immigration is giving people a lot of pause. What's giving people more pause than anything is that third debate performance. And I suspect this polling was done starting, I think, the Friday, Saturday, Sunday after that debate. Had it gone on a little bit longer, although obviously you couldn't because of the calendar, Perry's numbers would have been down even further. His debate was horrible, and I think people are willing to give him maybe one more chance to get it right and then move on to someone else.
I want to show, before I bring Kevin and Roland into the conversation, I want to show a little moment here. Governor Romney and his wife were out in Michigan over the weekend, and I'm going to call this, no disrespect to anybody intended, I'm sure a lot will be taken, Al Gore light.
Oh.
You want a better kiss than that? We're not going to do an Al Gore moment.
Now, we bring it up not just because it's cute video, but I want Kevin to jump in on this point. You saw the horse race numbers that Perry, Romney. Look at this. If you break it down, there's a gender gap in the Republican field. Among men, 35% of Republican men say Perry, 18% say Romney. Among women, 26% say Romney, 22% say Perry. Why do we have a gender gap in the Republican race?
Well, I think one of the, and Eric made this point earlier, that as people start to learn more about Governor Perry, that some of the issues that are not very helpful to him with women voters have come to the forefront, namely the HPV vaccine. For a lot of mothers out there who have 13-year-old daughters who may have been forced with an inoculation, they may see something like that as something that they don't agree with, and it's something that they've started to reject. I also think that there's also a point where Governor Romney, many voters have started to gravitate towards him because the overall issue that he's been focused on has been the economy. And moms, dads, people who are old, people who are young really want this economy fixed. And because that's been his central focus, his electability has been very apparent. But also he has gained with many voters in the Republican Party.
You're chuckling a bit there, my friend.
Yeah, because, look, clearly it doesn't help Perry to talk about the HPV issue. It doesn't help him at all. But while you have Republicans who are not happy with his immigration stance, that is exactly what is going to be appealing to Latino voters, especially in western states. So when you talk about Colorado, New Mexico, and Arizona, Nevada, that's going to be critical. And so Republicans are sitting here upset by it, but this is a guy who is from Texas. And I can tell you right now, Texas is a lot different from Georgia, than Tennessee, than Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana when it comes to Latinos. And so Republicans may want to start figuring that out, because at the end of the day, if you just diss Hispanic voters, you stand and lose the West, and you're guaranteeing President Obama wins re-election.
So Roland's making the case that he thinks Perry's a stronger general election candidate because he can pick up Latino votes. You're going to disagree?
No, I would disagree with that. I think if you look at Governor Perry's position on Social Security, a lot of those suburban voters that win presidential race, Philadelphia, Columbus, Arapahoe, and Jefferson County out in Colorado, they are absolutely turned off by his rhetoric about wanting to, calling Social Security unconstitutional. I also think that Governor Perry's his position on the immigration issue, it is not a consensus issue. He's actually at odds with not only Republicans, independents, and Democrats when it comes to giving tuition to illegal aliens.
So what it says is there's no perfect candidate. That's what it says.
There's never on that point, there's never a perfect candidate. Eric, hang on.
There's a bigger issue there.
Go ahead.
Yeah. There's a bigger issue there for Romney, for example. I mean, remember, we've now had a series of, I've lost track of the number of debates we've had. And at first you had Tim Pawlenty and Michelle Bachmann butting heads with each other and people going after those two. And now you've got Rick Perry coming into the race. And so you've had everyone piling on Rick Perry. One of the advantages that Mitt Romney's had thus far is that people have largely ignored him in the debates, going for other people. Everyone's waited for the debate where everyone makes Mitt Romney's record the issue. It hasn't come up yet. And that's also an Achilles heel for him. And that when it does start coming up, we're going to be in November, December, January, right when people are starting to pay attention. And I like Mitt Romney, but he's been on basically every side of every modern political issue in American history.
I feel like he's taken his hits, Eric, in a lot of these debates. You know, they have focused on him. He hasn't gotten out scot-free. I think the difference now is that he's much more accustomed to understanding that these attacks are coming, and he has very crisp, very clean answers, and he has a command of the issues that a lot of the people that are watching these debates care about.
All right, I'm going to ask all you guys, Eric, Kevin, Roland, are going to stay with us. Before we go to break, I want to show you some numbers that don't need commentary because they speak for themselves. We asked also about Governor Sarah Palin in our poll, and I want to put the numbers up here because if you look at our poll, she peaked in our poll back in August at about 16% of Republicans wanted her to be the nominee. She is now at 7%, and I'm going to say it's a safe bet there that Republicans are beginning to think she's not running, and we're going to look elsewhere for candidates, and maybe some of them are a little tired of her not giving her decision. So, Governor Palin, if you're looking at those numbers, if you have a decision to make, I think your voters would like you to make it. Up next, President Obama's blunt advice to some of his closest political allies. Advice to say, presidents don't get asked this every day.
I don't have a job, but that's because I've been lucky enough to live in Silicon Valley for a while and work for a small startup down the street here that did quite well. So I'm unemployed by choice. My question is, would you please raise my taxes?
That small startup down the road was Google, by the way. He did quite well there. That gentleman's a millionaire if you didn't figure that out. Here's something else you don't hear often. This is Saturday night at a Congressional Black Caucus dinner, and the president has a message for some in the organization who have been critical of his agenda.
Take off your bedroom slippers. Put on your marching shoes. Shake it off. Stop complaining. Stop grumbling. Stop crying. We are going to press on. We've got work to do. CBC, God bless you. And God bless the United States of America.
Pick it up there with Roland Martin, Kevin Madden, and Eric Erickson. Who has to stop complaining?
That's a very good question. And the reality is, when you look at unemployment at 27%, in terms of especially young folks, when you look at actually 40%, it's a huge number, black men as well. And so, look, there's a return on investment. African Americans made perfectly clear when President Obama was elected, 96% of the vote. So a lot of people say, well, hey, he really can't do certain things, wait for the second term. No second term is guaranteed. And so it's also a question of this administration recognizing that there are some issues with his base. When you look at those numbers in the Washington Post, a story just last week, those numbers have fallen. The administration has been saying, oh, it's okay, these things are going to work out. But the reality is he is going to need a dramatic turnout in Virginia, in Georgia, in North Carolina, in Florida, in those critical states in order for him to win re-election. So he has to shore that base up. And he got some work to do.
Let me add Ohio and Michigan.
Absolutely.
And maybe some others. I just want to go over.
Pennsylvania.
I want to show our Republican friends some numbers here just to see what they think of the difference here. This is our approval ratings versus favorability ratings. This is the president's favorability rating. Now, you watch, like anything, it's down from where he started in 2009, but 53% of Americans have a favorable view of President Obama, meaning they like him. A majority of Americans like him, have a favorable view. This is his job approval rating. You have a gap right there. Kevin Madden, when you see the president on the road, number one, he's talking, you know, Roland's right about trying to rally the base, but when he's out there talking about the economic plan, he's trying to bring those closer together and move them both up. Will voters in November, in a close election, say, I like him, so I'll vote for him, or does it come down to his favorability, we like him, or his job approval rating, do we want to give him 4 more years?
You know, that's exactly what those numbers down there, that 45% shows me that, and the fact that his personal attributes still remain above sea level, that this is not personal. This is a performance-based judgment that people are making. And right now, the performance has to do with the economy. So all of the talk where the president's trying to position himself and he wants people to see him as a fighter, they want to see him as somebody that's fighting for, you know, the people versus the powerful, almost like the Gore campaign in 2000, that's not going to be enough. The only thing that's going to help this president is his performance, whether or not he can turn around the economy. And where he goes wrong on policy is that he's still not putting together the big policy prescriptions that he's going to need to put the economy going in the right direction.
Well, Eric, when Kevin makes that point about policy prescriptions, is it just a referendum? We've decided no. Or do you see, and I know you've talked in the past, but you think Governor Perry has to come out with a more detailed plan. So is it time now for the Republicans to be more details, more contrast, or should they just worry about their own race and let the president be out there campaigning?
I think the Republicans, to a degree, have a benefit of time right now, John, in that as long as there are so many candidates and it's so close among several of them and numbers are going up and down, then the Democrats can kind of try to paint the Republicans with a broad brush, but it's not going to work in the general election. And, you know, I'd throw out the name Leon Jaworski, the Watergate prosecutor who condemned Ronald Reagan, saying he was going to lead us into nuclear war and needed to be defeated. And when Reagan got the nomination, Jaworski became the head of Democrats for Reagan, saying he'd rather a competent radical than an incompetent moderate. Jimmy Carter had higher personal approval ratings than Ronald Reagan in 1980 and still lost.
So, John, what jumps out is I think about Ann Richards losing to George W. Bush in that election. Very popular governor. You look at those critical issues, people say we really like her, but he was able to focus on critical issues and talk about leadership. And so what President Obama has to recognize is people do want to see that level of action. And so the question is, will he maintain this attitude? And also, will we see people on Wall Street held accountable for their actions? As long as people say we didn't see any results from people who screwed the economy up, they're going to hold him accountable, and that's something he has to deal with.
And I would agree with Roland, and quite frankly, I'd probably agree with the Obama campaign that tells you this is going to be a choice. But ultimately, fundamentally, it's also going to be a contest for the future. The problem for Obama right now is that he's being judged very harshly based on the results that people have seen so far. So they're not as willing to trust him that the future looks any brighter with his continued policies and his lack of leadership.
And Eric Erickson, when you watch the president...
John,
good.
Well, Roland mentioned Ann Richards. Paul Begala has said several times on here that after she lost, she called Bill Clinton and told him to remember it's not what he's done for the country, it's what he's going to do for the country, and they've got to believe him. And I think we're at a tipping point right now over whether independents actually believe Barack Obama and what he says he's going to do.
I think that's an interesting point. We'll watch the president's out on the road. If you watch where he's going, he's got the map in mind just like all of us do as we look at it. I like the way you put that.
We're all working on the same map.
All working on the same map. 50 states, and they're complicated. Eric, Kevin, Roland, thanks for